What is up? What is up? What is up? This is Schmitty. And for those of you that don't know me, a quick introduction. In my 30s, I did triathlons. I rode about 300 miles a week, and I ran about 30 miles a week or so, and I swam maybe a mile a week up until my triathlon. So I would train from April to about September, October, and then the months of August, September, October, I would ramp up my swimming because I swam in middle school and high school. I'm very familiar with swimming. I wasn't familiar with distance running or even cycling for that matter. So I have some significant issues with dehydration. As in my last video, if you haven't seen it, I'll probably post a link to it somewhere on this video. But one of the things is uh, with dehydration, one of the issues you might run into is nutrient delivery. So if you can imagine, if you didn't eat, all type of things that would come about, right? So if you can eat, maybe your fight or flight response would take over, right? Or maybe if you didn't eat, your heart rate would be bad, or you'd be fatigued, or et cetera, et cetera. You go down the line. So dehydration plays a real role in nutrient delivery. And from this last video I did, here's a section on nutrient delivery, magnesium and potassium, and then anxiety. And I'm following a format that I always use to do research. I use Koala AI right now, and you can also use Google Scholar to do something very similar. But with Koala AI, you get directed questions and directed answers with the sources, and it already analyzes some of the conclusions of some of the studies that maybe 20, 30, 40 pages long. And Koala AI is really efficient. If you want to check out Koala AI, you can check out my affiliate link. I'll put it in the description. And for now, we're going to talk about nutrient delivery and go on with the rest of the video. And then it's really interesting because it mentioned magnesium as being really important. And I want to say a little something about magnesium in my experience, right? So typically, I get dehydrated, right? And so I noticed this, and I noticed that I need to need to drink more um, water, but I need more electrolytes in my system. So I take these tablets where they're like horse pills, basically, and they give me my electrolytes for the day, right? And typically I found that they make me really tired. And I deduced, I don't know this for a fact, right? This is my theory. I deduced that it's because of the magnesium is why I'm getting tired. And my theory on magnesium is that, okay, so I found that magnesium is extracellular and intracellular, and magnesium forms an electrolyte pair with potassium. Potassium is mostly intracellular. So if you drink potassium rich foods, you get more energy. And then I also know that potassium and magnesium are necessary for ATP production. So anyway, so basically many of us don't eat foods with enough potassium. And so that's why we typically have problems with magnesium, because magnesium needs this in order to come out of a cell. For potassium to come in, magnesium needs an electrolyte pair of potassium to be effective in some ways. So anyway, so that led me to ask, um, you know, is magnesium extracellular or intracellular? And I'm thinking that it's intracellular and extracellular. And here are 5 scientific sources in MLA format that suggest that electrolyte magnesium is both extracellular and intracellular, right? So all of 1994, 2007, 1994, 96, and 2012. And it also says that these sources discuss magnesium in different contexts, but all suggest that magnesium is found both inside and outside of cells in the body. And then I went on to the potassium to support my theory about this potassium being mostly intracellular. I want to understand, there's where it pairs with magnesium, why it's important. So I asked questions to understand if it's intracellular or not. And so let's see what I asked my Koala AI to list at least 5 scientific sources in MLA format that suggest that the electrolyte potassium is mostly intracellular in the human body. And it says here are 5 scientific sources in MLA format that suggest that the electrolyte potassium is mostly intracellular in the human body. So one from 2014, one from 2014, one from 2012, one from 2007, one from 1986 by Kasiska, Huang, Gennari, Arroyo, and Adroch. And so we know that potassium is mostly intracellular, so that when we consume potassium and it's in our system, it wants to get into the cell. And magnesium is hanging out on both sides of the cell wall. And when there's ever potassium present, magnesium likely comes out of the cell while potassium goes into the cell, creating, in my theory, it creates more enzymes for us to process food, because I found that when I eat salads, my digestion gets a lot better. But anyway, that's besides the point. There's other things going on other than, enzyme production, like short chain fatty acids there as well. But we're gonna go on, and I'm wanting to ask Koala to list some foods that are rich in potassium. So I asked Koala to list foods that are high in potassium along with the content. So list foods that are high in potassium along with the potassium content per 100 grams. Cite relevant sources in MLA format. Here are some foods that are high in potassium along with their potassium content per 100 grams. Sweet potato, spinach, white beans, rind apricots, avocado, yogurt, salmon, acorn squash, mushrooms, banana. So dried apricots are probably the best. So we know this, my theory about magnesium, potassium, and I also know that magnesium and potassium help the body create ATP. So I asked Koala AI to describe the mechanism by which magnesium and potassium play a role in energy production in the body. And I wanted to cite relevant sources in MLA format. Magnesium and potassium play important roles in the energy production in the body through the involvement of production and utilization of ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate, the primary energy source for cellular processes. Magnesium is required for the activation of ATP synthase, an enzyme that produces ATP in the mitochondria, the energy-producing organelles in cells. Magnesium also plays a role in the transport of ATP out of the mitochondria and into the cytoplasm, where it can be used by the cell. And the source is from 2003 from the author Swaminathan. Potassium, on the other hand, is involved in the maintenance of the electrochemical gradient across cell membranes, which is necessary for the production of ATP by the electron transport chain in the mitochondria. Potassium ions are also involved in the regulation of ion channels that control the movement of ions across cell membranes, which is important for the generation and transmission of electrical signals in nerve and muscle cells. Wang and Kuo from 2007. Together, magnesium and potassium play important roles in the production and utilization of ATP, which is essential for cellular energy metabolism. So Swam and Swaminathan, these are the two, Huang and Swaminathan, the two sources that I got for this. And it goes to support my theory of how potassium works. I didn't really get into detail about magnesium and mitochondria in my theory because it's not that important. Typically, I think we have sufficient levels of magnesium in our systems, but it's usually potassium that we typically lack, right? And so before we get into the video, I should have described this, but so how do we characterize dehydration, right? All I know is that I feel sick, I feel tired, or I feel like exhausted, right? So I asked my Koala AI to define dehydration and cite relevant sources in the MLA format. Dehydration is a condition that occurs when the body loses more fluids than it takes in, resulting in an imbalance of electrolytes and reduced fluid volume in the body. Dehydration can lead to a range of symptoms, including thirst, dry mouth, fatigue, dizziness, and confusion. In severe cases, dehydration can lead to low blood pressure, rapid heartbeat, and even organ failure. And these sources are from 2000, 2014, 2018. CASA, one source, Chevront, another source, and Kinefic from 2018. So all this being said, and I've talked about my history as a swimmer, and I should also say that another reason why my shoulders dislocate is because I did the butterfly. So I swam the 50-meter butterfly for 6 years, where I'm stretching my arms, and it's a very vulnerable spot when you come out of the water, and you're doing this a lot. And then initially, my doctors were telling me that my back muscles are so strong that the tension is what holds my shoulder in, and this tension isn't optimal, and that's why the shoulder keeps coming out. So my shoulders are always coming out because I did the butterfly for 6 years, and I swim a lot. And one of the things that I realized is that there are other swimmers with problems, probably with dehydration, right? And so I thought, who is the one swimmer I would imagine might have issues with dehydration? And then, of course, I don't nobody say nothing bad about Michael Phelps, right? I've been watching a lot of Michael Phelps videos. Like when my son and I, we go swimming at the pool, I want to get him used to being in the water at 2 years old, right? Or even younger. Or he was like a little kid, like, barely 1 year old. We would watch swimming videos. So we would watch Michael Phelps videos before we go to the pool. So anyway, besides the point, I started to think about issues with anxiety and depression. Throughout all this research, I realized that dehydration can probably play a role in anxiety and depression. So I asked Koala AI if dehydration may contribute to anxiety and depression. And so here's the question: might frequent dehydration play a role in anxiety and depression? I asked it to cite relevant sources in my format. Yes, frequent dehydration can play a role in anxiety and depression. Dehydration can lead to changes in mood and cognitive function, including increased anxiety, irritability, and confusion. Additionally, dehydration can lead to an increase in cortisol, a stress hormone that has been linked to anxiety and depression. One study published in the Journal of Nutrition found that dehydration can lead to increased feelings of tension, fatigue, and confusion, as well as decreased cognitive performance. Lieberman et al. 2019. Another study published in the Journal of Psychiatric Research found that dehydration is associated with increased symptoms of depression and anxiety in young adults, from Armstrong 2018. Furthermore, a review of the literature published in the Journal of Clinical Psychology found that dehydration can exacerbate symptoms of anxiety and depression, and that adequate hydration may be an effective strategy for reducing these symptoms. The author here from 2018 is Galenix. These sources: Armstrong, Galenix, and Lieberman, right? So there you have it. That's the research I've done so far on dehydration and some of its negative effects. If you want help, seek a fitness professional. If you want help from me, there's resources on this video, on this YouTube channel, at iHeartGains.com. I'm Schmitty. I hope you reach your fitness goals, and I'll talk to you in the next video.